Come on in, pull up a chair, and take a load off because today I'm going to share my review of Dungeon Crawl Classics Dying Earth from Goodman Games. Does this box set bring the classic fantasy world of Jack Vance to life at your game table? Or is DCC Dying Earth dead on arrival? Well, you're going to find out right after this. Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. Thanks for joining me once again. As I mentioned in the open, today I'm going to be sharing my review of Dungeon Crawl Classics Dying Earth from Goodman Games. It is written by Mark Bruner, Julian Burnick, Bob Brinkman, and Terry Olson. This box set is available now. It carries an MSRP of $59.99. I do believe it also includes a PDF with that. And if you're looking just for the PDF alone, you can score that over at DriveThruRPG for $39.99. All that said, let's swing on over to the other camera because here I've got the box set for Dungeon Crawl Classics Dying Earth. Before we dive on in, do want to mention a few things. First off, the fine folks over at Goodman Games were kind enough to provide me with this review copy, but neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share this review with you. And these days, it's important that you know that. Also, we are going to dive on into the 3 books which are contained in the box set, but we're not going to look at each and every page. I do want to give you a very good feel for what's in those books and share my thoughts about them as well, but we're not going to peek at every single page. So this is the box that the 3 books and the map come in, and gotta say, it's a nice, sturdy box. Sometimes we don't see really sturdy boxes with role-playing game box sets, but this should hold up pretty nicely. So first thing we'll take a peek at is the map of the Dying Earth, illustrated by Doug Kovacs. And of course, if you are familiar with Dungeon Crawl Classics, then you know Doug Kovacs' artwork. I'm a fan. I like his art. I like this map a lot because it feels, looking at it, you get the feeling like, oh, you know, this was actually drawn by a denizen of the Dying Earth. And as many pieces of artwork with Dungeon Crawl Classics, if you take a look, there's all these little Easter eggs all scattered throughout. So I like it quite a lot. And the paper stock that it's on is treated, so this should hold up pretty well. So let's take a look at the first book. This is the player's Libram. And this is the player-facing book. And I do want to mention that you need to have the Dungeon Crawl Classics core rulebook in order to utilize this box set. You do not have the game rules contained in these 3 books. So it's important for you to keep that in mind. And there are quite a lot of tweaks and differences to the gameplay if you're going to be utilizing Dying Earth as opposed to the traditional mechanics of Dungeon Crawl Classics. Now, many of these are kind of optional, and that's kind of an aspect of Dungeon Crawl Classics is it's relatively modular. So you can plug things in that you like, take things out that you don't. But there are quite a few aspects of the new twists and kind of tweaks to the mechanics that you don't necessarily have to utilize. So we're going to start off with a little bit of a background on the 21st Aeon and the Dying Earth. You're going to get more detail in a later book, but once again, this is player facing. So we get kind of a little bit of a breakdown, some important people, important places. We get into our character creation, which is very, very similar to Dungeon Crawl Classics. You can play as the traditional classes from DCC, and then we have 4 new classes for players to dive on into. We have the Magician. So magicians are going to be different than you would find in like wizards. So that's something that you want to keep in mind, because magic in Dying Earth, and I'll be honest, from my reading of the Jack Vance stories, he seems to be more focused on it being like mathematical and scientific in the earlier stories, whereas in the later stories, it becomes more like an art. But all in all, you're looking at the magic in Dying Earth is both a science and an art. So something else to keep in mind is any sort of character can access magic. They can utilize magic. Now, they may not have the same affinity for magic as a magician would. So if you are looking to really focus on spell casting, obviously enough, you're going to go with a magician. We also have that thing. I guess I should point out that in the stories, a great prime example of a magician would be Rialto. A Vat thing would be Tisane. And a Vat thing is actually a living creature that was created by a magician. And I like the Vat thing, very interesting character class. We also have the Wayfarer, which is kind of a roguish character, but they also have access to magic. A prime example of a Wayfarer would be Kugel. And then we also have the Witch, which I guess, yeah, that's kind of funny. Which I would say is maybe my least favorite of the 4 new classes, probably because we don't have as much experience with witches as far as like central characters in the Jack Vance stories. And the witches do utilize magic. They also utilize curses. So that's kind of cool as well. Witches tend to be associated with demons. So you're not going to find too many lawful witches. So in my opinion, I think the reason why it's my least favorite of the 4 new classes is that I think it hamstrings players a little bit as far as the sort of character that they're going to be able to play. Once again, I don't dislike the class. I'm just saying it's probably my least favorite of the new classes. I think the Vat thing is the one I dig the most, which I find very unique as far as the class. We also get equipment, some information about Vancian language, which I found was pretty funny, because there is a lot of Vancian language that is utilized in this Dying Earth box set. But once again, this is pretty much our player-facing book. Next up, we've got the primer of practical magic. And if you are not overly familiar with the Jack Vance stories of the Dying Earth, you may already have heard of Vancian magic, though, because essentially the magic system in Dungeons and Dragons is considered to be Vancian magic. It was a very serious influence on Gary Gygax when they were building Dungeons and Dragons, designing it. But it's not truly Vancian magic. So if you are familiar with Dungeon Crawl Classics, which I have to assume if you're watching this video, One of the cool things that I love about that system is that magic is wild, it is dangerous, it is corrupting, and you don't necessarily forget a spell when you cast it. Now, that can happen, especially if you fail casting the spell, but it's not like in, say, D&D, where it's like, oh, you've got spell slots, or earlier editions, you just had the various different spells that were available to be memorized per level. Here, bit different. So the whole concept of magic in the Dying Earth is that magic is just so complex and difficult to grasp that you can only actually keep so many of them in your head at one time without going mad. And even the greatest of sorcerers cannot have, dozens of spells memorized. So that is one aspect of the Vancian magic that I really, really do like in this box set. So we also have what is known as rote magic. So with Dungeon Crawl Classics, it's very swingy as far as the results when casting a spell. And some people love that, some people don't. But with rote magic, when a player character learns a spell, what they're going to end up doing is they're going to roll to see just how effective or how powerful a version of that spell do they know. And there will be various different triggers throughout their career, which will allow them to re-roll to see if they can learn a more powerful version of that spell. One of the triggers would be, and of course, it's completely up to the game master. One of them could be whenever they go up in level, or it could be whenever they learn a new spell. Something also that's important for you to keep in mind as far as the magic in Dying Earth is that it is rare. There are only so many spells that are still out there. There used to be far more spells that magicians and others knew, but it's down to about 100 spells. And the player characters aren't going to just be able to go learn spells all willy-nilly because they went up in level. No, they have to actually find these spells. And for the most part, magicians aren't willing to give up this knowledge. So in order to possibly learn a new spell, a lot of times the player characters are going to have to give something up or possibly perform a service for whoever they're getting the spell from. So love that quite a lot. I will mention, if you are not a fan of the Dungeon Crawl Classics magic system, this isn't going to change your mind. It still has a lot of tables. Every spell has at least a full page, sometimes more, for the possible results. This book also provides us with the curses that the witches use. So just kind of giving you an idea of what you'll find. And of course, these are just new spells in addition to the spells within Dungeon Crawl Classic. So it's not like these are the only spells that are available. These are spells that are drawn from or inspired by the Jack Vance Dying Earth stories. So that is the primer of Practical Magic. And then the final book, and this is going to be Game Master facing, is Intimate Anatomy of Several Creatures and Personages of the 21st Aeon. Rolls right off the tongue, don't it? This is going to be a bit of a gazetteer, although I guess maybe I shouldn't say it's a gazetteer, because it's sort of almost like the greatest hits, because the Jack Vance stories take place all over. And travel is very, very dangerous on the Dying Earth. So it's sort of like people don't know much about anything else that's out there, which as a game master is actually pretty cool because you can sort of make Dying Earth whatever you want as long as you know the sun is dying. That's why it's Dying Earth. There aren't a lot of people left. I mean, you know, it's probably in the tens of thousands, not billions. And as long as you kind of stick to that, you kind of have free reign to do whatever you would like. So we're going to start off with some patrons. So, of course, if you are familiar with Dungeon Crawl Classics, you know all about patrons. And, of course, the first patron we get is Pendulum. There you go. No, is that? No. There we go. That's supposed to be Pendulum there. Which I thought you can't see his face. Maybe I'm wrong, but I thought that was one of the things about Pendulum is no one has actually ever seen his face, that his face is hidden away under his cowl. And Pendulum also happens to be the patron of Vat Things. So, and if a magician wants to be able to create a Vat Thing, that has to be their patron as well. So we get 4 new patrons. We also get, here's our bit of a gazetteer discussing various areas of the Dying Earth. We get a good number of random tables that are kind of cool as well. In fact, each of the books has a random table on the back. I like that. But of course, random tables are sort of a Dungeon Crawl Classics thing. So we are also going to get a breakdown of like the Aeon stones and the different like unique artifacts. We get more information about those. And then, of course, we're going to have a bit of a bestiary that's going to break down many of the various different creatures and different peoples, because one of the aspects, too, about Dying Earth is humans aren't all human. So there are various different, but I mean, we're not talking like dwarves and elves. We're talking about essentially, at least in my opinion, what seems to be like mutations of humans. So we get all of that, and then we wrap up with some appendices and an index for all 3 books telling you where you're going to be able to find various different items. All right, so those are the 3 volumes in the Dungeon Crawl Classics Dying Earth box set. Let's swing on over to the other camera so I can share my final thoughts as well as my review score. So if you sort of have the impression that I'm really digging the Dying Earth box set from Goodman Games, you would be correct. Now, I like Dungeon Crawl Classics. I really dig a lot that's going on in it. I love the mindset that it has, and I'm a fan of the funnel adventures and so on and so forth. And I also happen to be a huge fan of classic fantasy, the Vance stories, Howard, Libram, and so forth. So I really dig when I see one of those settings come to a role-playing game. And something I really appreciate that's taken place here with Mark Brunner and his team is they have not taken the Dying Earth and had to make tweaks to its concepts so that it fits in with the Dungeon Crawl Classics mechanics, because that's what we see a lot when an IP is adapted for a role-playing game system. Changes are made to the setting or to the kind of like overall feel of the IP many times, not always, but many times, so that it fits with the mechanics of that role-playing game. Here, Goodman Games has done the opposite. So, core mechanics and concepts of Dungeon Crawl Classics have been changed or tweaked in some respects so that it's more in step with the Dying Earth. Love that. Really, really love that. Speaking of love, you can tell that this is a labor of love. This isn't something that was thrown together in a period of a year or something like that. Now, I know it's been, what, about a year and a half, maybe a year, 2 years? I don't know. When you're doing this for 13 years, sometimes you're not like sure. It's like, when did I share news pieces about this Kickstarter? Within the last year or two is what it funded. But you can tell that work did not just begin just prior to that Kickstarter hitting. You can see that a lot of time and effort has been invested to make this box set the best it can be. So very, very nice. I mean, you pick up this box set, if you enjoyed the Jack Vance stories, you are going to feel right at home. And if you've never experienced the Dying Earth, there's enough in this box set to help you understand it. Now, of course, there's no replacement for actually enjoying the stories and the novels, but still, I wouldn't say it's crucial that you've read or listened to the audiobooks for the Dying Earth stories in order to enjoy this. Really, really well done. Production quality, really nice too. It's what we kind of, we come to expect from the softcover books from Goodman Games. So all in all, really nice that as well. Artwork, if you are not a fan of Dungeon Crawl Classics artwork, this won't be changing your mind. But I like it. I dig it because it feels like old school role-playing games. So I definitely enjoyed it as well. Now, gotta be completely upfront, this is not perfect. So I will point out, this came very close to being a 10 out of 10. It really did. I think it's that good, except for one thing. And that is that it almost feels incomplete a little bit because we don't have any stat blocks. We have really no breakdown, no gameable information regarding all the major characters from the Dying Earth stories and novels. So we don't have stat blocks for Kugel or Rialto or Pendulum or Tsane. None. And I was shocked. Shocked, I say, that wasn't in any of the three books, especially the third book, which is kind of our bestiary. I was, like I said, very, very surprised by that. So that alone stopped this from getting a 10 out of 10. Now, I had somebody tell me, I guess kind of off the record, they don't work for Goodman Games. They're not really affiliated with Goodman Games, but they are in the industry. And we email a lot. And I had mentioned that I was going to be doing my review for DCC Dying Earth, within the next few days or so, because they had emailed and said, hey, they really liked the first look video and it looked really cool. What did I think? And I said, well, I'll wait till I do my review. But I did mention that I was kind of surprised that there were no stat blocks for Kugel, Rialto, so on. And they said that there is a fourth book. It's not in the box set. I don't know if it was a Kickstarter exclusive. I would certainly hope it wasn't. But there has been like a proof copy that went out to backers, or maybe they were backers of a certain level, that has this fourth book. And the page count is actually higher than any of the 3 books that are in the box set. And all those stat blocks are there. Plus, there are some additional monsters, and I think there's more patrons, more spells. So, sadly, I haven't seen it. And sadly, it's not part of the box set, or at least those stat blocks for the important characters are not included in the box set. And that's a shame, it really is. Because this could have been a 10 out of 10. All that said, I still think that the Dungeon Crawl Classics Dying Earth box set is excellent. It really, really is. And of course, there are 9 adventures now that are available for this setting. I've got a review of the first. It's a 0 level funnel that'll be popping up in the next couple of days or so. So stay tuned for that. But yes, this is so well done. It is really, really well done. And if you've got any interest whatsoever in the Dying Earth, even if you haven't read the stories, you really should pick this up. Keep in mind, remember, you need to have the Dungeon Crawl Classics core rules as well. So on a scale of 0 to 10, I give DCC Dying Earth box set a 9 out of 10. Oh, so close. Oh, so close to the 10 out of 10. All right, that is it for this time out. Thanks for joining me once again. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, don't forget, ding that bell, because it'll not only let you know when I upload videos such as this review, it'll also inform you when my live show, The Gaming Gang Dispatch, streams right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central. Currently, it's about to change, but currently, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday evenings. All right. Like I said, thank you very much for joining me. And until I see you next time, here's hoping each and every one of you gets to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.
Oh, hey, you're still here. That's okay. You don't have to leave just yet. In fact, why don't you subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel right here, or take a peek at the latest live stream, or even find out what YouTube recommends you check out from the channel. And of course, I'm Jeff McAleer. Thanks again for watching.